Welcome to this very special edition of the Dynasty Pulse. I am Biggs. We got Greinberg, we got Coach Retzlaff, we got Shebdoor Sanders. Schultze is in the back messing around in some drawer or something, doing his producer thing. We have a great show. Now, I don't know if there's anybody out there who likes tight ends more than this guy. And I don't know if there's any content creator that I like more than this guy. That's Andrew Cooper. Let's bring him on, Andrew Cooper. He can be found at He can be found at Koopa Fiasco on Twitter. Andrew, go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know where they can find your work and stuff, and we'll get started.
I mean, you kind of said it all, man. Just a guy, loves talking ball, loves talking tight ends, loves talking to you guys, man. Really love the show. Thanks for being on. All my stuff for the most part's at Fantasy Alarm. You know, articles are all up there. Our YouTube's over there, and we have the Sirius XM show. I'm on 6 to 8 p.m. Thursday and Friday, channel 87. And during the season, Sunday morning, getting ready to rock and roll. So that's where all my stuff is right now. You know, various guest appearances here and there. But Fantasy Alarm, Andrew Cooper, that's the easiest way to find it.
Fantasy Alarm, the whole squad is great. Shout out to Howard Bender. Now, we're excited to have you on. We're going to talk a little bit about the Yin-Yang Tight End theory, which is something that you have come up with. You had a pretty incredible year. You recently earned 3 Fantasy Sports Writers Association awards, which is phenomenal. Best radio show, Football Writer of the Year, and Football Article of the Year. That's fantastic. I've had you on a couple shows. We've had you on the Dynasty Pulse before, and it's really, really great to see somebody get accolades when they're as cool a person as you are. And congratulations on all of the shine.
I appreciate that, man. And I'll tell you, it goes back to something that JJ Zacharyson said a while back, where he was like, it all starts with writing for me. Like, I have to write. I sit down and I write. And then from there, you take those takes, and that becomes your tweets. That becomes your videos. That becomes your podcast. That becomes your radio takes, right? And for me, like, I know there's different people out there doing different things. You don't have to write. Some people are just YouTube. Some people are Twitter, right? But like for me, I consider myself a writer. So to win the award for writing, like, that means everything to me. And I appreciate you mentioning that, and I appreciate you having me, man. So let's get into it. Yin-Yang Tight End, that's kind of where it all started for me with the fantasy football stuff, for sure.
Well, so go ahead and explain that to everybody.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so the thing with the tight end position was, at one point, someone picked up a magazine in like 2003, and in that magazine it said, you can only ever take one tight end. Don't ever have 2 on your roster. And everybody just kind of took that as gospel, right? And the problem you run into with that is it doesn't let you get exposure to the high-risk, high-reward players. Because a lot of these guys, the floor is lava, right? You're not just going to take some of these players and start them week 1. Not to mention, some of the guys don't even break out. They're not even available to help your team until later in the season, right? Like, everyone's saying, oh, yeah, Trey McBride. He was the obvious answer in his sophomore year. He didn't do anything until Zach Ertz got hurt. To get exposure to that, you either had to have him on your bench when he started getting more snaps, or you needed to make a move and add him. But to get there, you got to have somebody else starting few early in the season. So I came up with this idea, yin and yang tight end, right? If you draft the first tight end off the board, you don't draft 2. You don't need to, right? But if you wait until 8, 9, 10-year league mates draft their tight ends, why not take 2? Why not take someone that can get you through the early part of the season so you're not bleeding losses, and then use a bench spot on the highest risk, highest reward option out there, and then just keep rotating them until you hit. And luckily for us, the first couple of years we started doing it, there were guys like Mark Andrews and Darren Waller and Logan Thomas, and these guys just coming out of the woodwork, right? And then they really helped, because like Logan Thomas, he through 6 weeks he was tight end 26, but he kept playing slot, kept getting all these routes, and we kept saying, okay, stash him. And then sure enough, by the end of the year, he was tight end 3. So it's like, that's the whole idea, is that like, you actually, if you start your draft with 9 wide receivers and running backs like everyone does these days, it's okay to have 2 tight ends. And guess what? It's okay to sometimes have 2 quarterbacks. Never have 2 kickers, okay? But you can have 2 tight ends and two quarterbacks on certain builds. That's the concept.
And if any of you out there want any kind of justification for how sharp Coop's strategy is. Last year on this show, he and I came to the conclusion that Jonnu Smith was going to be a big time breakout. Guess what happened? He was a value and he broke out. Let's go.
Let's go, man. Yeah. So just as a real quick on that, like we're looking for guys that could be top 2 targets on the team if possible. That's like the golden goose. Being number 1 is great and all, but the number 1 tight end season of all time was Rob Gronkowski in a year where Wes Welker got 173 targets, but Gronk was 2. Once you become 3rd, very tough path to upside. The best player in fantasy that was 3rd on his team in targets per last year per Pro Football Focus was Rashad Bateman at wide receiver 40. But with high consolidation, you can get to these guys like George Kittle, like Jonnu Smith. High consolidation plus athleticism, that's the next step. We're trying to figure out our way to get there. So Jonnu Smith fit that bill and worked out for us.
Nice. All right. Well, let's get into our first segment here, which is probing our expert. And we know that we like your tight ends there, Andrew. So we're going to, probe you about our tight ends. So Schultz, let's get that video going in our first segment. Okay, Chelsea, it's up to you to ask our first question to Coop. Welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Glad I can make it. So I'm going to give my one tight end claim to fame here is I picked up Julius Thomas prior to week 1, the Peyton Manning year. So that I just had to throw that out there talking tight ends. That's my
2013, right? So there's been 5 tight ends to score over 200 PPR points with 95 or fewer targets. 3 of them are George Kittle. One of them is Vernon Davis, the most athletic tight end all time. The other one is your man there, Julius Thomas, the year that Peyton Manning threw, was it 55 touchdown passes?
Yep. And you know what? He was my man until he signed with my Jaguars. Then he turned into Fat Julius, and I was out.
You know what it was? He was no longer Orange Julius. He became Steel Julius, and that's not even a thing.
Too many Orange Juliuses for that guy. Right, so, dude, I'm glad we brought the yin and yang thing up already. Big fan of that strategy. Chasing that upside late, obviously super smart. The usual lack of fantasy depth at the position, like it lends to that. Like just take these shots at someone who's going to have the chance to blow up here. I love it. Last year on our shows, we hammered the crap out of Hunter Henry as a late round guy that we really liked. Touchdowns never really kind of came. He only got 2, but 97 targets and he caught 66 passes, 674 yards, tight end 12 finish. Despite being the tight end 19 or around, his average draft was about tight end 19. Which tight end in this class do you see as like a yang guy moving forward, or is it kind of tough right now because we don't have landing spots?
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? And I'll tell you, with Hunter Henry, I made it to top 300 in Best Ball Mania last year, the final day. My tight ends were Hunter Henry, Pat Frymuth, and Greg Dulcich. So basically just Henry and Frymuth. So like you can piece it together, especially in best ball, right? But the thing is, the yin and yang tight end for redraft really requires knowing the opportunity, right? Because you could have the very best tight end, but he ends up landing on a team that has 2 high-end pass catchers, and his path to upside isn't really going to be there. Not to mention, like if Tyler Warren were to, I know they signed Gesicki, but let's say hypothetically he were to go to the Bengals and be with Chase and Higgins, he would still be drafted high, but the targets wouldn't necessarily be there, right? So for us, for yin and yang tight end, you have to wait and see who lands at a team where they can get the opportunity. And what we're looking for in terms of opportunity is every top 5 tight end going back to 2003. Randy McMichael was the last one. Yeah, that's a deep cut to finish top 5 in fantasy without getting either 90 targets or 10 plus touchdowns. And very few guys get there with 10 plus touchdowns, and the guys that do can be really inconsistent. So a lot of times the guys that do also get 90 targets. So it doesn't matter that they got the touchdowns, right? But like the guys that don't get 90 targets and get 10 plus touchdowns, they're not super consistent. I'm talking like Robert Tonyan. Right. And in championship week, he caught 1 pass for 17 yards and pulled your pants down in front of everybody. Right. So like you don't want to chase the targets. You want to chase the targets, not the touchdowns. For us to find a yin and yang tight end, you got to wait and see where these guys land. But I would definitely say that you want to lean into the guys that will go up the pass catching tree. If you're looking for that, you're looking for someone to help you now. some of these guys, even if they have the upside to eventually be a pass catching tight end, if they land somewhere with an incumbent tight end that is the pass catcher, you got to think about what that tight end coach is going to do. They're going to go in there and say, okay, you're blocking, you're running routes. And we've seen it time and time again. Dallas Goedert next to Zach Ertz was never going to get the chance to run the routes. Trey McBride had to be an inline tight end for a little bit next to Zach Ertz. Cole Kmet, just because Jimmy Graham was there, had to play inline, and Jimmy Graham got to go in for goal line and stuff. So think about how these guys are going to be used. Obviously, we want to avoid all the Drew Samples and Darnell Washingtons, but some of these guys might end up having to be an inline tight end if they land somewhere where there's already somebody who's better at pass catching, even if we think long-term they're going to have success. So that I would say guys like, hey, long-winded way of saying like Colston, Loveland, Harold Fannin, Rondé Gadsden, those type guys that are never going to block, they're being drafted to catch passes. So that's probably your best bet, that type of profile.
So I was going to kind of follow that up with, you have a situation like with Las Vegas, Michael Mayer, and then the Raiders have Brock Bowers fall into their lap. Mayer was ostensibly going to be a top 10 pass catching tight end, but Brock Bowers absolutely usurped his role and Mayer was hurt. Are there other situations like that where you see, like they're talking about trying to trade Michael Mayer, that you see maybe a breakout coming from somebody who has been blocking but is ready to start shine?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like we've seen it a bunch of times. We saw it with Delaney Walker stuck behind Vernon Davis for like 7 years, and then he finally went to a different team, and people were like, "Wait a second, this guy's crazy athletic." We saw it with Martellus Bennett, had to block a bunch, then he broke out, then he went back to blocking. Mercedes Lewis, Dallas Goedert is the best example, right? Because he was kind of stuck behind Ertz. But I look around at guys like Jatavian Sanders was forced to rotate with Ian Thomas and Tommy Tremble. I know Tremble's back, but Ian Thomas is gone. Theo Johnson has a potential opportunity. I mean, you guys got to look and see who has the chops and is stuck. I mean, and if guys get released in front of these guys, it creates a ton of opportunity, right? Like Evan Engram getting cut, Brenton Strange coming up, right? There have been rumors about Noah Fant maybe not making the final roster or being on the trade block. What happens if AJ Barner gets that role on a team that uses a fullback and might have more consolidated targets? I mean, you just got to, honestly, my best advice to people out there is, read the article I wrote on like what makes a breakout tight end, what makes an elite tight end, and then use your imagination, right? Because there's so many people that come to me and say, "Hey, I like this guy because of the things you said," and I say, "Dude, I didn't even think of that. Like that's genius."
So you said those words, and what I heard was, as soon as Tyler Warren is drafted by somebody besides Indy, go pick up all the Jelani Woods shares.
I mean, I'm just
I can't quit that man.
Indy has to. I mean, he's just such an enigma, right? Like Jelani Woods. We haven't seen him. Kylan Granson's gone. Will Mallory's doing nothing. Mo Alley Cox is gone. It's like, Drew Ogletree is just an inline guy. Man, they had such a mishmash of weird guys over there. Like they really do need to get a singular starting tight end, but hey, Jelani, you never know.
Chev, you got a question?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. First and foremost, let me start off by saying we had an interaction on Twitter last summer where I was in the middle of drafting my Best Ball Mania teams, and you were talking about how potentially Jake Ferguson was just not good. And so I immediately pivoted my strategy from drafting like Jake Ferguson and Dak to doing something else and then waiting. And then Jonnu Smith was like, he was in like the 6th to 15th, like 14th, 15th round, like around June, July. That's when I was doing most of them. And I was able to get a bunch of those shares. So also shout out to you again. But that leads me into my question. I'm an unabashed Titans fan. As you can see, the Corey Davis jersey behind me. I've been a Jonnu Smith truther for years and years. So this breakout was super satisfying and vindicating. So my question to you is this. Do you see a Jonnu type of guy this year in this crop of tight ends, this rookie class? And why is it Harold Fannin? And what do you think about the long-term prospects of a guy plagued by injury like an Elijah Arroyo breaking out and dominating the way he did at the Senior Bowl in spite of only having one real year of fully complete film as a prospect?
Yeah, great question, man. And everyone that went to the Senior Bowl loves Elijah Royal. Theo, Greminger, number one, they waving that flag. And I will say that, like a guy like Jonnu Smith, the reason that he can excel is that he's a two-way tight end that can block and catch passes, and he just ended up in a scheme that's perfect for that. A guy like Harold Fannin doesn't necessarily have the speed. Jonnu runs like 4.62. So for anyone listening, anything under 4.6 is going to be 90th percentile, right? 4.59 puts you in the 90th percentile for tight ends. You player profiler guys, double check that for me, but I'm fairly confident. Type like Sam Laporte in there. He ran a 4.59. I guarantee he's like 91st percentile or so, right? Anything that's like 4.5 is going to be 100 percentile. They're just not guys that run 4.5s. The Evan Ingrams and Vernon Davises are like off the scale, right?
Right.
Anything sub 4.7 is going to be fast enough. Ideally, sub 4.65 is going to be fast enough to be like that Jonnu Smith type, where if you're in a highly consolidated offense, and what did it for Jonnu Smith is they use the fullback. Same, he was just basically East Coast George Kittle. When you use the fullback and use blocking tight ends like Julian Hill and Eric Saubert, you're only going to have four guys on the field at any given time that are going to get the football: two wide receivers, a running back, and the tight end. Because guys like if you look at Eric Saubert and Kyle Juszczyk for the 49ers, these guys played like 800 snaps and touched the ball like 20 times. Like, obviously, that's going to consolidate things. So if you're looking for a Jonnu Smith type, you kind of want a two-way inline tight end that has the speed. And I'm not sure that's what Fannin is. Doesn't mean I don't like Fannin. It means that if you're looking for a Jonnu type, maybe like a Terrence Ferguson could go to a team that wants to use the fullback, like Clint Kubiak going to Seattle, right? And they just, right? So think about that. Clint Kubiak in his press conference said, I'm using the fullback. Last year with the Saints, they used the fullback, and it was wheels up for Olave and Shaheed. Now, they didn't have a every down tight end because Taysom Hill ruins everything. But, like, if you look at what Jonnu became in that situation, they could do that there, right? And if they will feel really froggy about one of these guys, you cut, save a bunch of money, and install that type player. Harold Fannin I do like, but I think he's more of a big slot type player. He did run a 4.7, right? Yeah, so it's like, and you mentioned that I hate Jake Ferguson. I don't hate Jake Ferguson.
No, I didn't say hate. You told me he wasn't good.
I told you he wasn't good. In this industry, that might as well be hate. You're right. But the thing about not being good is that guys that run a 4.8 or above, I've been tracking this for a long time. The guy 40 time versus guys that have plays over 40 yards. George Kittle has like in his career, he has like 20. And he's like the only tight end in the NFL that has multiple 70-yard plays, right? Because he runs a 4.5 too. But if you look at guys in Jake Ferguson's speed, we're talking a 4.8, right? There's a reason if you go to player profiler, his picture is Turd Ferguson. And that's because Matt Kelly and I were joking about that on a show. Matt, when he gets something in his head, he throws it on the side. But like 4.8, no tight end that runs a 4.8 or slower has more than one 40-yard play in their career since Kyle Rudolph. So no active tight end in the league currently. It's just right. Well, the thing is, I mean, just think about it logically. If the whole idea is that you can outrun linebackers and safeties. You can't outrun the corners. You might be able to fist fight them down the field the way that Gronkowski and like Kittle used to, but you're not going to outrun the corners regardless. But if you can outrun the safeties and linebackers like Tucker Kraft did last year on 2 60-yard touchdowns, then you can make that happen. If you run a 4.8, there's no one on the field you can outrun, really. I mean, like defensive ends are going to catch you. So like you just don't see that. Like go and look at Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz runs like a 4.7, 4.6. Somebody pull up player profile. But he's in that mid 4.7s range, and he has one 1,000-yard season in his career, and he needed 156 targets to get there.
I have an update straight from playerprofiler.com. Incidentally, go play Fast Draft. It's at fastdraft.app. If you like drafting and you want to draft faster with Fast Draft. Use code BOOTH for a $50 deposit match. All right.
You're cutting into my question.
No. I'm just updating. Sam Laporta with his 4.59, according to Player Profiler, that's 92nd percentile. And then we have Harold Fannin Jr., who ran a fairly pedestrian 4.71 at the combine, and that is 67th percentile. So I don't know if there's a Bowling Green Pro Day that's happened and Harold Fannin has rerun and made his time better, but 4.71.
I think it's one of the last ones of the year. But it regardless, like guys like that, it's not that they can't have massive seasons. Like I said, Zach Ertz, one of the best fantasy tight ends. They need to get peppered with targets though.
Right.
So that like minimum 90 targets. I mentioned the stat earlier with 95. It's all just freakazoid athletes, and then Schultz's guy Orange Julius. That a shopping. If you gave a shopping cart a gentle push, it could have caught 8 touchdown passes from Peyton Manning that year. Right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm sorry, but like,
good catch radius on that.
People were catching. That's what I'm just saying. If you usually had to put a wide enough face mask on a guy, he probably would have caught a couple of touchdown passes. Manning was just firing them. That 55, dude. That's insane. So like, that's where I stand. Is that like it's a bonus? It's not a prerequisite. The targets are the main thing, but the more speed you have, the more of these plays you can break off. I mean, look at Jake Ferguson the year before last, right? Like he had 102 targets and he caught 71 of them, which is a ton, and he only had 700 yards versus like, look at Kyle Pitts, his rookie year. He caught like less than 70 balls and had over 1,000 yards because he can break off the big plays. Same with George Kittle. There's a reason George Kittle is a unicorn. He can do he had 1,000 yards last year, and how many catches did he have? Less than 70. So that's the difference. So it's the difference in ADOT. It's the difference in breakaway speed. It's why long speed matters for tight end when it doesn't matter as much for wide receiver and running back.
An excellent point on that. And you really alluded to succinctly how Zach Ertz is very much a catch and fall down type of player, especially at this stage of his career. Tied to Jaden Daniels, not the worst thing. Back to Jonnu Smith, the Dolphins pick at 13. Who is an archetype of a tight end who the Dolphins could end up adding in surprise, or that you would really like to foster development in Miami? Because I think too, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, they brought in Jalen Wright. And then with the Dolphins, you got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, speed, need for speed, like Lightning McQueen. So at tight end, I'm adept to think that we shouldn't necessarily rule out Jonnu Smith, being safe or not. So what would you say would be a good pairing there in Miami for McDaniel?
Yeah, I mean, the Jonnu Smith signing last year, because I'm a big like free agency nerd. That's like I write 30 articles in 30 days, 32 in 32 days, because I just love free agency. I like a sucker for it. That was one of the best signings in a long time because they were collecting comp picks for guys like Christian Wilkins, right? So and Robert Hunt. So they actually, if they had signed a high-end player, it could have canceled one of those comp picks. But Jonnu Smith got released, which means he didn't count against the comp pick formula. So not only did they get their guy, they got him without canceling out these compensatory picks. I mean, Trey Bowen, Chris Greer, my guy. But like, so I love that from them. It's a 2-year deal, but you're right. There's only 1 year left on the deal. If you're a Jonnu Smith fan, right, like Chev and I, we're rooting for them to draft a blocking tight end, right? They only got Julian Hill now. They had to cut Durham Smythe over cap, and Durham Smythe went to the Bears. Bringing in a blocking tight end is just another one of those guys, Alec Ingold, blocking tight end, that consolidates the targets and it keeps Jonnu safe. The best guys that are going to be that Jonnu Smith type role are guys that can play in line, because you have to play in line and you have to be able to be athletic to some degree. So I don't think Colston, Loveland, or Harold Fannin, or definitely not a Rodney Gadsden are that type of guy. I think they should be standing up playing big slot. I think, obviously Tyler Warren's the answer for everybody, but I think if you believe Theo and the on-field speed, because Theo, I'm like, this guy didn't run at the combine. He hurt this guy's history of knee issues, and then he hurt his knee. And then at the Senior Bowl, that he didn't run at the combine, and his knee was still hurt so bad he didn't run at his pro day. But if according to Theo, he ran 175 miles an hour on field one day, right? On that, I think everyone knows the play that like Cam Ward down the seam touchdown. So if you believe that, then you believe that this guy's really fast. So Elijah Arroyo and probably Terrence Ferguson, and I guess you can sneak in. Obviously, if you're talking Dolphins, you got to mention Mason Taylor, right? Because of the Dolphins pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you guys know the deal with him, right? Like who his dad is, who his uncle is.
Oh yeah.
Well, what about Rondé
So-
Gadsden? That's a Dolphins legend too.
That is true, dude. The Dolphins cornerback Rondé Gadsden. As a Patriots fan, when I hear that name, I only think about that. I feel like people are like some people are like, oh yeah, that guy. They mentioned like other places he played. I was like, no, that guy's a Dolphin.
We don't need to be mentioning my nightmare scenario of
That's all I
Gadsden
think
going
about.
to Miami.
So, but he wouldn't be the problem with him. The problem, and this is why it would be a nightmare, right? Is because you have two wide receivers on the field, and you have a running back they're always going to use at least one, sometimes two, with the way that they like to play. And then you have Alec Engel playing all these snaps. Everyone that's not either a full-time tight end or one of the two wide receivers ends up in a rotation. And we don't want that. For ultimate upside for some of these guys like Gadsden watch the guy. He's a wide receiver, right? Like, you need that guy to be viewed as a full-time wide receiver, like Evan Engram is, or like Mark Andrews played 85% of his snaps at wide receiver 1 year. Or honestly, Travis Kelce. I mean, Noah Gray's the inline tight end, and Kelce basically, So like, you want a team to look at, and the Dolphins are not that team. So I think the Dolphins, if they draft Gadsden, he's kind of destined to be like an Anthony Firkser or Cameron Brate type rotational guy. So I don't want it.
We keep alluding to my question, but we'll get to Greinberg's first.
Okay, well, you mentioned, Theo a couple times, and he's gained a little bit of slack on X and, in the socials right now about him making a point about saying this tight end class is generational. To me, I think you got to have at least 5 can't miss prospects right now outside of Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland and maybe Mason Taylor, like you mentioned earlier. I'm not seeing that level of certainty from these other players like Terrence Ferguson, Harold Fannin, Gunnar Helm, and Elijah Arroyo. On top of that, Player Profiler right now has already got 6 of these guys, Warren, Loveland, Arroyo, Fannin, Taylor, and Ferguson, ranked in their top 20 in Dynasty rankings, even though none of them have even played a snap yet. So my first question is, do you agree with these rankings, or do you think some of these tight ends should be ranked lower? What's your take on which rookie truly has the potential to be elite in fantasy football? Obviously, I mean, Tyler Warren, but any of these other guys?
Yeah. That's the thing, is that Theo, always so positive. Too much toxic positivity from that guy. Actually, you need the undroppables to come in and lay some negativity on it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you need. That's the real yin and yang right there, right, dude? Like, so I will say that if you go back and look historically, right, take every tight end class and sort them by fantasy points, career fantasy points for the players from that class. The best class, there's arguments about who the best class is or not. Gronk and Jimmy Graham were in the same class, but the tight end 3 that has the most fantasy points, career fantasy points, so the third best one from a class is Marcedes Lewis. It is so incredibly rare to find a class that has just 4 or 5 superstar tight ends. The 2017 tight end class has a chance to be one of the best of all time, and the tight end 3 in that class in career fantasy points is Mike Gesicki. And the tight end 4 right now is Jonnu Smith because of the very late start. But like, that's what we're talking about here. It's like Kittle, Engram, Gesicki. Like, it's just so rare for it to happen. Now, the reason we can't just say, okay, it's Loveland and Warren and then no one else, is that because we never know who the guys are going to be, right? Like, you could have told me it was TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant locked in, but it was David Njoku and TJ Hawkinson, or however you want to look at it. Like, these guys could bust, right? One of these guys could be Eric Ebron, although Ebron did have that good season with Andrew Luck. But one of these guys could be Eric Ebron, and then one of the later guys is the guy. That's why we got to evaluate them all, right? So in terms of like this being a generational class where there's 5 guys that are just starters and they should all be in the top 20 in your dynasty rankings, I mean, you can rank them all that high. Just know that you're probably going to have to move a bunch of them out. And that's why, for me personally, I don't go that far before the draft. I wait and see what we're going to get for landing spot. I wait and see what we're going to get for, professional scout evaluation on these guys via draft capital. I mean, like, I'm one of those guys where it's like, why would I don't play Devy. Why would I take the puzzle and turn it upside down if I could just get additional information, right? It's like, I know people want to do that because if you do a puzzle upside down, you're only doing it because to say I did it. And I get that people want to do that. We need to come up with a new game. After the show, you and I, let's all brainstorm and come up with a game where fantasy analysts like predict not just like a mock draft, because then you're doing like tackles and all that stuff. Let's figure out a game where it's like we just predict landing spots for the draft, and then somebody gets some award, and then after that we can go back to actually like using the draft as a tool to help us. Because you look at models like Ryan Heath's and JJ Zachariason and Dwayne McFarland, draft capital is the number one metric for a reason. So for me, I can't crown this class. I will say this: there's a bunch of guys I like. I'll round it out that way. There's a bunch of guys I like, but am I going to say that this is going to be the one time ever there's 5 guys that are awesome? I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone can make that claim without landing spots. That's like you talked about, like the Dolphins. If one of these guys gets drafted by the Dolphins, you just hit it. Like you're already looking at a huge hill to climb just to be relevant. And to have 6 in the top 20 before any of them have played it down I think that's extra spicy. I mean, you're looking at tail end of the teens. You see guys like a Pat Fryermuth, who's got 2 top 12 finishes, like 2 seasons as a tight end 1. And that's the type of guy who's ranked down near the 20th. Like, so that's extremely spicy for me. And yeah, it's
a lot,
yeah,
but it could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, just for 2025 purposes, because of the Evan Engram to the Broncos move, and even to some degree, Tyler Conklin kind of gumming up things a little bit with the Chargers. If it's a top guy that goes there, it's fine. But like, how many really tremendous landing spots are there right now where a guy can be a top 2 target? I mean, let's go around the room. Can anyone think, Chef? Can you think of one where right away a Tyler Warren would be a top 2 target on the team? Because there are some.
Where Tyler Warren would?
Let's say, or pick your favorite one. Like,
oh yeah, Tyler Warren's my favorite, but I mean,
like if he got drafted by, I'll go first because I got my favorite team right here, the Patriots. I think that if Tyler Warren run the Patriots, him and Stephon Diggs would probably be the best 2 pass catchers on the team tomorrow, right?
Houston,
but I mean, potentially, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Jacksonville.
So Seattle be tough if you have to put Cooper Kupp on the ground.
That's the one, but
you have to put Cooper Kupp on the ground. Jacksonville's interesting.
Yes.
Right. So there are spots. I mean, Chargers. Yes, I think so. If you're just dumping
Commanders.
Conklin. Commanders.
Don't do that to my man.
Zach Ertz. We will not tolerate any Ben Sinnott slander. You Canadian.
Sinnott slander.
Hey, how about Dallas?
The Debo.
How about going to Dallas?
Dallas, I like because I'm a Jake Ferguson.
Right? Denier. I thank you for that.
And now I would also throw out the Jets just because it's Garrett Wilson and then who, right? And I'll bury my own guy Stone Smart on that one. But here's the thing is those teams have to decide that 5 of these guys are good enough for them to draft early enough in the draft that they'll not only draft those guys, but they won't draft a wide receiver. Right. So like if the Jaguars, their whole plan might be to get a Mike Evans type split end, like a Jaden Higgins or something like that. They got to decide we don't need that because we're going to draft Tyler Warren. Because as soon as you add that other wide receiver, it messes everything up. So it's like, what are the odds that 5 of these dudes go to the perfect spots where the teams pull a Brock Bowers and say, yeah, we don't need wide receivers because we got this guy.
Well, this is where you're thinking of, you're in the formative stage. You want more information after the fact.
That's where I'm at. Like I am willing to say that I like Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland a lot. I like Harold Fannin and Elijah Arroyo and Rondé Gadsden and Terrence Ferguson and then Mason Taylor and these guys. And like, if they land in the right spot, then one of them is going to be my tight end 3, but it's just hard for me to say, this class is going to come in and just steamroll everybody. Whereas the running back class, I can kind of see a lot of these guys coming in and just kind of bullying their way to the front, like the 2017 class did, where they was just like, it was like a clean sweep. All those guys were awesome except Samaje Perine.
Yeah, you could take the individual talent away from this, and I think you're just asking for way too many chips to fall into the right place for this scenario to play out.
It's a lot. They have to like him as much as we do, which is like so rare. Like some of these guys are going to fall to like the 5th round.
All right, Biggs, you got a tight end that you are really high on, and I'm sure you got an eager question to ask our guest here.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about Andrew is that I get take lock on a guy, and then Andrew is in lockstep with me, and he keeps leaking this name, even though he's not ranked as high on Player Profiler. He's not in Greinberg's question. So I want to ask you directly, and so think about what I could be leading to here. Why is Aronde Gadsden 2 the best rookie at the position that nobody's talking about?
Yeah,
because you and Aronde Gadsden 1.
That's you and I are suckers for this, dude, right? Because it's like we just care about fantasy. So like we don't care about the blocking. We watch the highlights. This guy's a contested catch machine, right? Incredible hands. I don't even know if he had a drop like last in his senior season. I mean, the guy was a super stud, against the competition you play at Syracuse, but like he was the focal point of the offense. It's just fun to watch this guy play, right? Now, the upside case for him is the same one for Evan Engram, where a team might look at this player and say, hey, this guy can catch the ball just as good as Tyler Boyd, just as good as Christian Kirk, and he's a much better blocker. That's where people get hung up, as they say, oh, Evan Engram sucks at blocking. He sucks at blocking when he's an inline tight end. When you put him at slot, he's one of the best blocking slot wide receivers in the league, right? So you got to have a team look at this guy and say, we're just going to commit to starting this guy essentially at wide receiver every snap. And if you're worried that he might get switched to wide receiver for fantasy purposes, Mike Gesicki played like 92% of his snaps at wide receiver and didn't fight the franchise tag. So now no one can. So like if you're categorized as a tight end, you're stuck, right? Kind of. Gesicki ruined it for everybody, just like he ruins everything. So like it's just like he's disappointing everybody. He disappointed everybody once again. So, but it's good for us in fantasy that you can't really fight that tag. Jimmy Graham tried, didn't work. Gesicki didn't do it. So like if a player is willing to, if a team's willing to take him and put him there, then great. The problem you run into is that the coaches that do that, Doug Peterson, not in the league. Chan Gailey's not walking through that door. There's only one like Sean Payton, Joker role tight end job, and Evan Engram has it. Now, if Aronde Gadsden gets drafted by the Broncos to kind of be the understudy to Evan Engram, now that's Stash City, baby. That's every taxi squad for me. And I'll use the third round picks or whatever because I know what that role is if you get it, right? Like, they tried different guys in that role. They tried Greg Dulcich. People forget he got 8 targets in week 3 and he dropped 3 of them. And then he never basically played again. Like he got a chance. He blew it. Lucas Kroll got a chance. Devon Bailey got a chance. Little Jordan Humphrey with the most misleading name in the game because he's like 225, right? Like the guy's a tank. Like they tried him at big slot. They want that player. Evan Ingram's that guy. If Gadsden goes to that, boom, love it. If Gadsden goes to the Chargers, where Greg Roman once upon a time had a top 5 all-time season with Mark Andrews playing 85% of his snaps from a wide receiver spot. Like you got to imagine a situation where he's going to get that role. The problem is if he's a rotational player, then he might just be Cameron Brate or like any of these other, and again, Cameron Brate, Anthony Firkser, Kylan Granson, Jacob Hollister. Like there's so many of these guys that just kind of end up being part-time guys, or like Dalian Holker. I mean, his stats were incredible in college and he's not even getting a chance. It's like Devin Culp. I don't know. I could throw a million. We easily forget because it's like we were excited about like Jacob Harris, converted wide receiver, and like all these guys. Like it's so easy to forget about the name.
Johnny Wilson.
Johnny, right? Every year I try to make every big wide receiver into a tight end. Elijah Higgins is one I will still not give up on. But but like we so easily forget about the ones that go away. But every once in a while, there's a Darren Waller or Juwan Johnson that is just like a big wide receiver that plays tight end.
Are we convinced that it's time to give up on Devin Culp? I mean, Cade Otton's only got 1 more year left on his deal.
I like the idea. I just think Devin Culp is a perfect example of a guy who got drafted because the guys in the room recognized the talent, but he ended up in a scheme that does not use the big wide receiver, right? They use the two-way tight end. So like Liam Cohen, you can trace it back to the Rams, who just use the big two-way tight end and 3 wide receivers, probably the most 11 personnel on any team. The most probably, right?
Yes.
And then he goes to the Bucks and they use Cade Otton as the 2-way tight end with 3 wide receivers. And then he goes to the Jaguars, and what do? They turn to Evan Engram and they turn to Christian Kirk and they say, we don't need you guys in the slot because we're going to have a 2-way tight end and we're going to have Brian Thomas Jr. be our version of Chris Godwin, our version of Cooper Kupp, which means he needs to be in the slot for 3 wide receiver sets. So we actually don't need you guys anymore, right? So like Devin Cole is now stuck where he kind of needs a change of scenery because he's fast, right? What did he ran like a 4.47, right? Yeah, nice pull. Like he was a fast tight end last year. 4.47 is.
That's why I can't give up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Is that 100 percentile? It's like 99. Yeah. I feel like anything under 4.5 is you're right there on 100 percentile speed. So, like, yeah, I'm with you, man. We need to get him to a new spot. Stone Smart got moved out to a new spot. We should have the opportunity. Fans community should be able to move.
We should be
five guys
in real
life. Guys per year. We get to pick from a practice squad
like
and just say, hey, you get set over here.
It's 99th percentile. 4.47 is. Just to add some color to the picture for Rondé Gadsden, he lined up in the slot 58.3% of the time per PFF in 2024, and he led the position in contested catches and contested catch targets. So I mean, he is just a giant wide receiver.
He is.
Like we do have a limited, like a very small keyhole that we're trying to fit him in to get fantasy relevance, but if it hits, it's a massive hit, right? Like it's a position changer. It's Mark Andrews, that sort of thing. Mark Andrews lined up in the slot 63% of the time this year. I just did a top 8 dynasty tight end, so I've got this stuff in front of me. But he was second in the position with 63% slot rate. So like we're looking for a landing spot like that, but how many are there?
And I'll tell you, I like to add. Like I used to look at slot a ton. I actually now skip over it and I add slot plus wide, right? Because if you look at somebody like Jonnu actually his slot rate isn't that high, but he played like
wide rate. Yes,
wide rate. He played like 20% of his snaps out wide. So I just skip right to wide receiver snaps. Same with like Sam Laporta.
Yeah,
because they have
Jonnu and Sam were the only 2 to play more than 20% out of the top 8 tight ends.
That's right. So when you add that together, like Jonnu goes from like 46% slot rate. Dude, I've been looking at way too much stats. Dude, he goes from like 46 up to 69% when you add the wide receiver.
Right.
Right. So it's like, yeah, let's go, dude. Probing tight ends and 69 Jonnu Smith, dude. It's one of those shows today, guys. But like when you add that
other day, it ends in Y on the Dynasty Pulse.
It's another one of those days, dude. But you're right. There's not a lot of those spots. But if you get the perfect one, right? And the thing is, the Chargers aren't even perfect anymore because of Lad McConkey's really good out of the slot. He can play.
I thought you were going to say because of Tucker Fisk.
Because they got Tucker Fisk, It's like, but it's just like it's not perfect anymore. And yeah, the 2 best spots are kind of not as good anymore. Like I think the Patriots quietly are still a good spot because Josh McDaniel was there when they had Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. And that's the only time 2 tight ends on the same team have finished top 5 in fantasy on the same year. You've had Goddard and Ertz were both top 10, I think, depending on the format. But like you rarely see it. But like, if Diggs face plants, then, or gets hurt, then I mean, whoever can catch passes is going to get targets.
Real quickly, shout out Davis High Blue Devils. Over under Tucker Fisk catches in 2025, 4.5.
That's are you setting that line or is that?
Yeah. No,
I was going to say, I would just say way under, probably like I would say closer to 0. Sorry, dude. Is that your high school? No, I mean, Tucker.
Yeah.
Tucker Fisk. I think honestly, he probably will cover the role. Just the addition of Tyler Conklin on top of Will Disley really gums up the inline tree. So
yeah, I mean he's a fullback. He's a glorified fullback,
and you don't want. If you have an pure inline tight end, now you don't want him to go there because, like Tyler Conklin, I'm not a big Tyler Conklin fan. Slow, doesn't break tackles, no contested catches, no, not great work versus man to man. But the guy, there's a reason that he had 3 years in a row with 87 targets exactly, right, or whatever it was. The catches start like this guy. Coaches like him, and they're going to have him out there. So I would rather have a just clean slate, wide open spot. The one I want to ask you guys about, I like getting people's opinion on this, and volunteer to go first. What do you think about the Colts as a landing spot for a tight end? And I find that this is a litmus test for how much people like Josh Downs.
I
It's
think
a
we should all
graveyard.
answer it all at the same time.
It's a graveyard.
Graveyard.
Who is the quarterback in this exercise, sir?
Yes.
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones.
I mean, well, my heart says Anthony Richardson because I want fantasy football, but let's say it's Daniel Jones.
Oh, okay. Well, then just slightly less poopy, but like
Slightly.
more like poop on your finger as opposed to like poop all over your whole body.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair. It's all bad though, right? Like you're right though. It's just it's bad. But yeah, I don't know because it's like people that don't like Josh Downs think it's a good spot. People that do think it's a bad spot.
Yeah, I changed my son's name to Josh Downs Jr. So
Yeah.
like I really like Josh Downs.
So do I, dude. So do I. That's how people are like, what do you think about the Colts? I'm like,
No.
I'm already a Tyler Warren shareholder, and I really, really hate that every mock draft has him going to Indy.
yeah, I think the Jets are going to be one of those spots where there's touches right away.
So we did get Justin Fields supporting DJ Moore to his best fantasy finish, but how many weapons do you think can fit under that umbrella if Justin Fields is the quarterback? And you're talking about a rookie tight end. Like we've had 2 historic breakouts, which I also have a question about Sam Laporta. I'll probably just DM you based on what we just talked about. But like how many weapons, especially like if it's a rookie landing spot, like, and we've talked about 5 tight ends being absolutely out of the question, being fantasy relevant. How many, like, what's the expectation if a Colston, Loveland, or a Tyler Warren goes there? Are you saying like we're going to get a third? Would you project that we're going to get a third year of a historic performance from a tight end from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah. The reason that it becomes such a good landing spot is not just the opportunity. It's a combination of things. One is that with these guys, where they're going, the Jets either need to take them at 7 or trade back and take them, and they're not going to trade back much farther. Like in my mock draft, I do have the Jets trading back to like 11 because the idea being that one of Warren or Loveland will be there, and I still have them going there, right? The other thing is that when you make that move in an offense like this that does not have a wide receiver 2, you are essentially committing right then and there to saying this guy, unless you're going to sign Amari Cooper or something like that, you're essentially saying this guy is going to be the second target on the team. And I know that I always say don't bet on teams having 3 guys get 100 targets because of how rare it is. But on the rare occasions that it does happen, it often includes a running back. So like the Giants one year with Odell Beckham Jr., Sterling Shepard, and dogs are out. The Giants with Sterling Shepard, Odell Beckham Jr., and Saquon Barkley were one of those teams. One of the teams, and this is why I say don't bet on it. One of the teams was Logan Thomas, Terry McLaurin, and J.D. McKissick. All 3 got 100 targets.
Oh, yes. No.
Right. So that's why it's never like the team with 3 wide receivers. It's always like some scrappy, weird team. And this could be a very scrappy, weird team where the only guys that are getting the football are Garrett Wilson and Tyler Warren and Breece Hall. And
Engstrom comes from a place where they do that too. I mean,
right.
You know, with the Lions. So that's okay. All right.
See what I'm saying? Where it's like it could just end up being one of those. You want teams with their back against the ropes. And then what you inevitably want is the gold standard for the tight end position is for a team to stamp it and seal it and say, we don't need to spend up at wide receivers because we have this guy. The Chiefs have been doing that for years with Travis Kelce. Patriots did it with Gronkowski. The Ravens with Mark Andrews. And now you're seeing it with the Cardinals, right? I think the Cardinals are sitting here saying, hey, you know what? Michael Wilson out there is sacrificial X, and we have Marvin Harrison, and we have Trey McBride, and then we'll have whoever play slot, Greg Dortch or whatever they want to do, and that's the offense. Like that is what puts guys into that next tier. Brock Bowers, so for me, for them to make that commitment to one of these players with the draft capital plus the available targets, all that working in unison can make me look the other way with Justin Fields and just hope that Justin Fields did throw a lot of touchdown passes to Cole Kmet. Cole
Kmet a top 10 tight end for 2 years in a row.
Back-to-back top 7 based on touchdowns, which, is better for best ball than it is for a redraft. But like, that's what we want because, you look at some of these other teams and even if Like you put a Colston Loveland on that team and they have 2 really good wide receivers. I can't pencil in 100 targets. And if I can't get those 100 targets, then what's the upside?
Beautiful. God, that's sharp. That makes me mad. That's way too sharp. And it's too much Jets.
Too much Jets, dude. I'm a Patriots fan. That's the thing. I'm a Patriots fan and a tight end fan, and the last thing I want is to have the good tight ends go to the team I hate and have success. It's just, but like you got to. But the formula is the formula, man. That's just the. We've been doing this for years, man.
All right, so Andrew, just going to Colston Loveland, you had mentioned him before. In my watching of Colston on the All-22, he seems like a guy who can just play hide and seek and then appear at the top of his route, just wide open. And tight end size-wise, they're usually much larger than those defensive back counterparts. And then to your point you made about the 4.8 speed, can you outrun those safeties? That'll break down how things end up for the tight end. What goes into tight ends being able to find those pockets of open field that you feel helps translate well to fantasy production? And do you see any differences from lining up in line in the slot and then to what you added on to where guys can line up out wide?
Yeah, pushing off, it definitely helps. But especially with Colston Loveland is very good at the contact point. He is so good. And you know who was really good at it was Rob Gronkowski. Nobody got away with more push-offs than 10 yards downfield. He would just be like, bam, with the elbow. And just like, they're just like, oh, that's just a big boy. That's just what happens. But like, those guys are so good at just being big and physical that like the Colston Loveland was a slant machine. And the reason was he would just run until he made contact with the corner and then just kind of just make the contact. And then he was just a bigger body that's wide open. Brock Bauer is incredible at doing that too. A lot of these guys at the next level are. And the big thing about slot that translates to fantasy is that, number one, you get the better matchup. Guys like Sauce Gardner don't go in the slot. Like he played maybe like 10 slot snaps. And that was a lot of times because it was lockdown man-to-man, zero coverage, like at the goal line. And when the guy goes in motion, you go with him. Like they never line him up there. So like they're not sending in their top corner many times. Some corners do true shadow every once in a while, but like they're not sending the top corner on you, right? You're also getting a better release because some of these defensive ends are assholes, dude. Like TJ Watt, man, you watch him, dude. He is just I don't know how he still gets the quarterback, but he just takes chops. Like he's just chopping tight ends in the neck at the line. He's just like on the way by, just like bang in the neck. That slows you down. It leads to lower A-dot routes. It leads to not being the first read on plays, because what you can have a guy be the first read on a quick hit play when he's going to have somebody bash him in the face. The other most important reason that playing slot and playing wide receiver is so good for fantasy football is because of the personnel mix. When you put Travis Kelce at tight end, but still have at slot, but still have Noah Gray on the field, who's coming out of the game? It's not a running back. You're not taking a lineman out. It's a wide receiver every time, right? When you have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert on the field every time, you're having at most one or two guys on the field. And with a team like the 49ers, like especially when they have injuries and stuff, they'll just play 2 tight ends and a fullback and a running back. And then there's one wide receiver out there. How many times do the Ravens go out there with one wide receiver? There was a year that the Ravens, I think it was like 2020 or 2019, the wide receiver that led the team in snaps was Willie Snead at like 51% of the snaps. Right. So the more, right, it's just like he was playing like split guard. Like he wasn't even catching passes, dude. He was just standing out there blocking. Right. So it's like
the Harry Douglas special.
Yeah, exactly. Just throw him out there, sacrificial, whatever, dude. Like Jameer Bird, right? Go ahead, eat him, dude. Right. It's like, but like teams will, the more opportunity you have for these guys to play in those positions, the less opportunity for other guys to take those targets is going to be. So that's why we always highlight and circle that one, because competing with 2 wide receivers is already a problem. But if they have 3 good wide receivers, I mean, just useless. The tight end is.
So I got a question for you on the Colston Loveland train here. I mean, he's been connected with the Harbaugh, tree for years, and there was a lot of speculation that they might go out and pick him up. And now with the Conklin news, what are your thoughts? Do you think Loveland is destined for the Chargers? And what's your fit there with the Conklin going there now? Will that complicate things for Loveland? Would it be like a year or two kind of thing for him if that's the case?
Yeah. So the thing with it is, I don't think it would be a problem, right? Because we saw 2019 Mark Andrews, right? The first year he broke out when he scored 10 touchdowns for the first time, he actually only played 40% of the snaps. Nick Boyle led that tight end group with 700 snaps. And again, you'll have to fact check me on this, but Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst each played like 450 snaps or whatever. It's just that he played a high percentage of his snaps from the slot, ran a ton of routes, and was just one of the focal points of the offense. And with Ladd McConkey, people will comp him to Julian Edelman. They'll say, "Oh, he's Julian Edelman because he plays the slot," and it annoys me because Julian Edelman is a good comp, but not because Julian Edelman played the slot. Julian Edelman played a ton. He played a decent amount of slot, but he played a ton of flanker. People don't realize how much out wide Julian Edelman played. And same with a guy like Zay Flowers. Like Zay Flowers can play slot. He can play out wide. I think with Ladd McConkey in a Greg Roman system, if you were to just take the best player available, and that player would be Colston Loveland, now Zay Flowers ends up being your Ladd McConkey, and you have two tight ends, right? You have to have 7 guys tethered to the line on every play. That's basic football. So you can tether Conklin in line and Colston Loveland as a big slot, and just have one little guy on the outside on each side, Quentin Johnston or Mike Williams or whoever you want to do it, right? So I think that they can easily make it an offense where those are the top 2 pass catchers on the team if they go that way, right? And that would be a confirmation bias via the draft. Now, if they don't do that, then that tells you that they do want Ladd McConkey to play that primary role. They're not going to go that way. Maybe he doesn't want to put so much pressure on Loveland by drafting him or whatever it is. I trying to understand what Jim Harbaugh thinks. It's hard enough to understand what Jim Harbaugh says, like out loud. Just trying to imagine what goes on inside of that brain. I couldn't even imagine it. But I will say, if they do go that way, I think that's an indication of what they're doing, and I will be all in.
Jim Harbaugh just fantasizes about Justin Herbert shirtless running in slow motion down a beach.
Right. Just chugging a gallon of whole milk, and it's just dripping down. Like that's all Harbaugh wants. Dude.
Counting khakis in his sleep.
We all want. Come on. We all got a little bit of that in us, right?
I love Harbaugh. My favorite Harbaugh quote, one time at Michigan, they were like, you're the quarterback whisperer. Like, why aren't the quarterbacks good now that you've gotten here? And it was like 1 year after he's been there. And he's like, it takes time. He goes, you can't plant potatoes one day and expect to eat potato salad tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Dude, just shut him. It's just incredible. I love Harbaugh so much, but I also don't quite understand every time what he's doing.
He's making potato salad.
Making potato salad, dude. Dude, it takes time. Dude, it takes time.
It takes time, right? Man, Andrew, we appreciate you having you on. Like, we got another segment, but I mean, we're an hour in.
If you want to do it, I'll do it. I don't care. You know me.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
if you're trying to keep your shows to an hour, kick me out.
Well, no, like I mean, we could easily cut it up into 2 shows. So we're so down for
Chev's
this.
Out. Chev left.
Yeah, no, he'll be back up. But let's keep going then. Let's get into this next segment here, where we're going to talk about some sleeper tight ends or guys that you're going to want to target, as they're rising or falling in ADP. So Schulte, or actually, what, Coop, why don't you start us off with a guy that you see in a totally different spot at this time next year, whether it's a rise up the board or a steady fall.
You guys do yours, and I'll pick from the leftovers.
Cool.
Let's do it that way.
All right. Let's go with that then. Okay. So then Schulte, you're on the board here.
Okay. I'm going to talk some Ben Sinnott. We kind of mentioned him a few times here. And we've mentioned a lot of Zach Ertz. So this is fitting. We got a guy here, explosive athlete, 9.75 RAS score coming out last year. Picked up 2nd round draft capital. Looking at that RAS, this dude has elite scores in vert, the broad jump, the shuttle, and the 3-cone. He's got Zach Ertz in front of him. He's 34, turned 35 this year. Andrew, you mentioned it. about being second in targets. Who was second in targets on the Commanders this year? Zach Ertz. So if we get the path here, like this guy's going to rise, and I think he's going to be an absolute star.
Dude,
and
sorry.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, like, sometimes it doesn't have to be hard, right? Sometimes this doesn't have to be like go digging into stats and doing all this stuff. We watched Cliff Kingsbury, right, set up an offense where he used a ton of tight end at the slot, and that tight end caught a bunch of passes, right? 6.5 targets per game for Zach Ertz when he was in Arizona. And we watched a tight end behind him who won the John Mackey Award and got picked in the second round sit behind him for a full year in 7 games. And then when Zach Ertz got hurt and he finally got that opportunity, then it was wheels up, right? And last year, very briefly, Zach Ertz left the game on a concussion scare. He got popped, and I can't believe he held on to the ball. But he left the game, and in that game, every game before that, John Bates had played more snaps than Ben Sennett, right? In that game, John Bates retained his inline role, and Ben Sennett leapfrogged him and ran a bunch of routes from the slot. So we already know it's in there, Schultz. We already know that they think of it the way we think of it. It's just a matter of when it does happen. When Zach Ertz either gets hurt, we never root for injuries. When he gets hurt or retires and moves on, does Ben Sennett take that leap? But that is the path. We know it's the path because they showed us the path. So I'm with you, man. I'm stashing wherever I can.
Going back to 2023 at Kansas State, he was 4th in the NCAA in missed tackles forced. He was 6th in NCAA in yards after the catch. Right. You talked about that little bit of chance he got. He and you mentioned the 40-yard plays. He had one in this very limited sample we got from him. He threw one on tape for us. Busts right down the seam and just rumbles and just like is just plowing over guys. Like I'm a huge fan.
Right.
I'm going to say something a little crazy here, but I see shades of Gronk out of this guy. When he gets the ball and starts running, like it's just a lumbering big man, and it's going to take multiple dudes to get him down. And it's not like
multiple dudes. We love that. Keep it going.
Yeah, let's go. It's not a flashy make you miss, but the missed tackles force were there in college. And even on that play I mentioned against the Jets, first defender, he ducked him and the guy went over his shoulder and he just kept going. So I love this guy. I think he gets the chance. He's gonna pop.
Yeah, and I'm a Patriots fan. It was never smooth with Gronk. Never smooth with Gronk. It was right. Don't be coughing at my Patriots fandom, Biggs. We'll be back. We'll be back on top. Don't worry about that.
No,
that was a scoff. That was a scoff. That was a scoff. No, I heard a scoff there. How dare you?
Scoff. Yeah, that
was a scoff. But like Gronk, man, like it was never pretty. Like he's jumbling around, his pants are falling down. He's like mushing guys in the face like this with his big like lunchbox hands. It was, but like it was. If you're it's tough. You know what I mean? But there was never really like a spin move or anything. So you're right that like there's multiple ways to do it, and that's the path for Ben Sennett, man. And I'm willing to hold him wherever I have him. That's where I'm at.
All right, Chev, who's your guy? Who's your riser or faller, or somebody that's going to be in a totally different position at this point next year?
I hope one of you guys pick a player I don't like.
I'm going to go with Cole Kmet. I think that the value, the team committed to him. They gave him a 4-year, $50 million contract. We've seen him, have 2 top 7 finishes. He is extremely touchdown dependent, but in the Ben Johnson offense, you could still have, I don't know what the target distribution is going to look like, but you could still have DJ Moore command his targets all over the offense and Rome lineup. They haven't determined who's going to play the big slot, and Cole Kmet's going to play a ton in line. So I think over the middle of the field, we could have some success there. So I chose Cole Kmet because I wanted to hear what you thought about him. I've been going back and forth about being a little bit early to the party to try to acquire him because he does have that big contract, and Ben Johnson is somewhat of a tight end whisperer. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I was way off Cole Kmet last year just because I know what Shane Waldron wants to do.
Yeah, Shane Waldron's trash.
He wants to rotate tight ends. He was doing it going back to the Rams. He would rotate tight ends, and he would rotate tight ends with Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee, and he packed Gerald Everett in his suitcase and tried to do it there. But Cole Kmet proved he was just better. So they gave Gerald Everett $12 million. crazy to me. But like when you look at the situation here, and I'm going to write an article on this year because I always talk about it, but I never actually write the article on the bets you're placing, right? So when you look at the Lions offense and you don't bring Ben Johnson over if you're not going to have him replicate that offense, right? They're probably going to draft a big-bodied running back and go with a two-back system. DeAndre Swift is not going to catch as many passes as Jahmyr Gibbs. I already don't think so. And Jahmyr Gibbs didn't get 100 targets himself, right? So I think that in this situation, the bet is this. DJ Moore is going to get his targets. If you're betting on Cole Kmet, you want Rome Odunze to retain shades of his field stretcher role from last year, be in the Jamison Williams role, which is a role where you can be fantasy productive. Jamison Williams was wide receiver 24, but it's a field stretching role where you get your money on yards and not so much on targets, right? In that, if that's the case, then Cole Kmet can be a top 2 target on the team, and he can get there with touchdowns too. Like you said, like Sam Laporta got there on touchdowns, double-digit touchdowns. I mean, he didn't even have 900 yards as a rookie, right? Kyle Pitts had 1,000 yards rookie. So, like, that's the bet you're placing. I do like Rome Odunze. I think that, I mean, if you look at Ryan Heath, but guys like Ryan Heath that come out with their predictive statistics do not like Rome Odunze because, like, he got a ton of uncatchable targets, and that's actually bad. But I think his role could change a little bit. If Rome Odunze is put into the big slot role, then we're in trouble because now Odunze is going to get forced targets, and DJ Moore is going to get his because he's DJ Moore, and that really hurts Kmet. So that's the bet, right? The bet is Kmet versus Odunze because Moore is going to be fine. So, and I think that's a fine bet because as much as I like Odunze the player, I think he could still be in a role that's suboptimal for fantasy as a field stretcher. So that's what you want to look for. First game out, if he's outside in the JMO role and DJ Moore plays a ton of big slot, then Kmet definitely has a path.
Sweet. Yeah, I love that. I'm hoping against hope. I think that he could be a guy that catches, between 7 and 11 touchdowns, but it's just not. I don't think it's going to be a high volume role. And so if it is the high volume role, then I think he could be top 3 to 5. Right. But he's never gotten that type of volume, if I'm not mistaken.
No, he hasn't. But the thing is, if you look at last year, right, the team that was closest, and again, depending on what site you look at, I look at Pro Football Focus because they get rid of a lot of junk targets. But like, if you go to Pro Football Reference, they just kind of whatever the ball is, they just say, okay, that's a target. Like the ball could go 1,000 miles an hour over Rome Odunze's head, which what it did a lot last year. They'll call that a target. They actually say the Bears did have 3 guys get 100 targets. And when you take Keenan Allen out of that equation and they don't add somebody in, the targets are consolidated among 3 guys, then yeah, I mean it could happen for sure, man. So that's why for me, Kmet, I think he's one of those guys that has a definite chance to be a back end tight end one. Hard path to be in a top 5 tight end. He'd probably need an injury because he's the kind of guy that either needs 10 touchdowns or he's going to need 100 plus for sure.
Right.
All right. I'm interested to hear what you got to say about the guy that I got pegged as a kind of a sleeper headed into this year. I think that he's going to skyrocket. He's got an opportunity to garner, that 90 reception kind of target range that you so speakly highly of. And I'm talking about Jatavion Sanders, 6'4", 250. I think he's primed to be a target monster this year. There's not a whole lot of depth at the wide receiver position there for Carolina. If he could stay on the field healthy, he's shown that he could gain targets, 5 targets in week 18 after coming off of injury. Bryce Young, I think he's a developing quarterback that showed a lot of signs at the end of last year that he could probably, withstand a wide receiver 1 and potentially a second target earner. And I think Sanders is in the position to really thrive here. He's got athleticism. He's got red zone potential. And I think he's a sleeper worth watching. I think his stock's going to rise up this season. And if he's, can play a full season or, not, hit the injury bug too bad, I think it could be very, very prosperous for fantasy managers. So what are your thoughts on that?
So when I talk about Harold Fannin, people, and my comp for him is JT Sanders. And people are like, oh no, I don't like that. But they don't realize how much I like JT Sanders. Like I like this player a lot. At Texas, he was a guy that, again, both these guys run about a 4.7, right? But when they get the ball in their hand, they seem fast because they're not interested in going down. They want to make plays. I mean, JT Sanders almost broke his dang neck last year just trying to make something happen. But like that's like when I look at college tape, one of the biggest things, and as much as silly as it sounds, is like who's trying to make something happen. Go watch Luke Schoonmaker's tape, and again, he wasn't put in many positions to make things happen, but he's just kind of runs play action, catches the ball, somebody tackles him, he gets up, and he's like, "Let's get back to the huddle." Then go back and watch George Kittle's tape. And George Kittle he'd bite your fingers off for an extra yard. He's diving from the 7-yard line to the end zone, knowing he's never going to make it. I think you know what I mean? But he's just like, you're a sicko. Like, he's just a psycho. You watch Tyler Warren, like, he's the main character, right? Like, and Jatavian Sanders and Harold Fannin had that. Like, Harold Fannin needs to stop doing the guns when he gets up because he's going to get a 50-yard penalty every time. But, like, he's got that swagger where he's just a monster. And Jatavian Sanders at Texas was that guy. Just, like, wanting to make plays. And last year, every time Tommy Tremble was out, Jatavian Sanders was awesome. He was getting the targets. He looked good. We used him in DFS a couple times. And unfortunately, they brought Tremble back. But without Ian Thomas, I think he's going to have a much bigger role. And on top of all that, you look around that team, and there's a lot of uncertainty, man. Xavier Legette, for some reason, jumps every time the ball is thrown to him. I just don't know if that's going to work in the NFL. Jalen Coker, I think, is a good player, but Jalen Coker is a guy I have no problem betting against too, right? You know what I'm saying? Is that like I think he's good, but like if one guy, here's the way I look at it a lot of times. And what we were doing with the Patriots last year is that like if everybody gets the same number of targets, the positional scarcity of the tight end makes those targets more valuable. So if the Panthers are going to go out and give Thielen, all these guys, Coker, Legette, 80 to 90 to 100 targets, and Sanders is going to be in that mix, his targets are more valuable because I can start him at tight end. If I could start Adam Thielen at tight end, he'd be valuable too. But that's the difference, right? So the fact that they don't have any guaranteed locked-in guys is great for JT Sanders. If they draft a tight end, if they draft a high-end tight end, he's cooked. If they draft a high-end wide receiver, he's probably in trouble, right? But if they don't, and they just go into these guys, why can't JT Sanders become a favorite of this quarterback, right? Like, again, there are some serious flaws with Legette. Coker could end up being the wide receiver 3 in terms of snaps with everyone healthy, like he kind of was last year. It's like, I don't know, So anytime there's uncertainty, I always side with the tight end because I'm a tight end glass half full guy.
Couple of things before I get to my guy. Number one, how much do you think Ian Thomas carves into Brock Bowers' target share? No,
0.0 Blutowski.
And speaking of Brock Bowers, Jatavian Sanders, second best tight end in the NFL, born in Napa, California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he and Brock Bowers share that.
Wow, that's a nice little tidbit. Wine Boys, right?
I just dug it up just now.
I like that. Yeah, we don't have many tight ends. Actually, we do. We have Pat Frymuth is a Massachusetts guy. There's not a lot of Massachusetts born and raised NFL players in general, but we got move.
Well, if you know any Canadian tight ends up here in Saskatchewan,
Oh, we know a few.
We know the tight end from the University of Regina.
To Noah Theodore Olivier.
That's the tight end. Because I was gonna say I don't know any. I only know a couple NFL players in general from
University of Regina. I want to say 52 yards per catch. 6'8". Dropped 150 pounds while he was doing his PhD dissertation at Kepli in Turkey. Anyway,
it's funny, Coop, because we've got a rookie guide and we dropped that to our graphics guy, and he was searching all over the place for Noah. And we were like, "Hey man, how do you not know?"
And he's Canadian too.
Get him in there. Yeah, 6'8". He must have been drinking his bags of milk then, huh?
All right. My favorite part of that scouting report is he was a converted defensive tackle, and he sometimes flips out, gets PTSD, and sacks his own quarterback. All right.
You gotta send me that.
My guy is Theo Johnson. He's coming off Liz Frank surgery, so I don't know if he can like run up and and start right away in 2025. But I think that's non-invasive enough that he could be ready by the time the season starts. The only person that he has in front of him to beat out is Daniel Bellinger, unless they invest higher than 4th round draft capital on a tight end. And really the only target competition that he's got is Malik Neighbors. So then you start looking at he's got quarterbacks, Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. And we saw what Jameis Winston did with David Njoku down the stretch last year. I'm super, super high on Theo Johnson and just waiting for his athleticism to pop in the NFL. What are your thoughts on Theo?
The upside case, of course. So Daniel Bellinger crossed over to the dark side. It's very rare to have a tight end block as much on pass plays as he was asked to and come back. You end up being a blocking tight end when you get to that stage, right? Of the guys that blocked over 15% of their pass plays in the season, there's only been 3 that I know of that have finished top 5. That was George Kittle at 16% freak. Our guy Julius Thomas, just touchdowns. That's it. And then Gronk 1 year caught 10 touchdowns in 10 games and got hurt. And he technically was over that number at the time. But like once you go to he was blocking like 25% of his pass plays. It's just not a place where you can live. Theo Johnson already took over the starting job. So he's the guy there. Malik Neighbors is going to get his targets. The battle now, like Darius Slayton is a sacrificial X. You need Theo to get more targets than Darius Slayton. Is there a Darius Slayton fan in the house? I see. I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't think he's that great of a guy, great of a player. But Wan'Dale Robinson, the problem with him is he grades out routinely outside the top 200 wide receivers in run blocking. He is just a turnstile. Like Rondale Moore, these guys can never be full-time players because of that. So Wan'Dale Robinson, really, and then you look at his snap counts, it's like what, 60% maxing out a game, maybe a 70% here or there. He's getting these junk targets, but like he's never going to be a full-time player either. And that kind of opens the door for the tight end to take a step forward and be a focal point. Because if you've got a tight end that's playing 90% of the snaps, and Wan'Dale Robinson ends up being a more of a 50, 60% guy because he can't block, then tight end in those situations can end up being the second target on the team. And if, God forbid, anything happens to Malik Neighbors, that unlocks 755 targets or whatever he's on base for. You know, I know. I'm sorry, everybody, but I'm just saying. One of the things we talk about is what I call the double handcuff plus tight end, right? Cade Otton, right? Cade Otton, if either wide receiver gets hurt, whenever that happens, he's great. When the both wide receivers are healthy, he's terrible. Yeah. Like, I mean, just go look at the numbers. I mean, like he was getting like 11 targets a game when both wide receivers were hurt. So like some of these tight ends, you have to ask yourself, if this happens, then what? And that's why we were so off Cole Kmet last year, because it was like, okay, if Keenan Allen gets hurt, then what? Well, he's still the third target on the team. Dalton Schultz last year, like it did happen. Everyone got hurt, and he did end up getting into a position, and he still wasn't good. But some of these guys, if one guy gets hurt on the team, or either one of the 2 wide receivers gets hurt, then he's awesome. Dallas Goedert last year, when wide receiver was hurt, he had 140 yards. But otherwise, he's just not a guy we trust. So, like, you got to consider that, especially in like best ball where you're drafting a room of tight ends and all that. So, I mean, you guys are pretty much nailing all the guys that have a path here. Is it my turn yet, or is still somebody left?
I got one
more. Okay.
All right. So for me, David Njoku, on Friday, I was talking with Chev on From the Forum. David Njoku, he's going to pop off in 2025. I'm calling top 3 tight end in 2025. Njoku right now, tight end 10 on Underdog, round 10. Heading into year 9, will be 29. Dan Williamson always talks about tight ends aging like a fine wine. I look at it from a reverse engineering standpoint. We see a quarterback improvement, be it Shedeur Sanders, or another year out, if you believe enough, in Kirk Cousins in that system from his injury. Has a little bit of T. Higgins problem, David Njoku. Played just 11 games last year. 13.5 fantasy points per game, ranked 4th at the position. Average, this is what I really like on Njoku, 8.8 targets per game. Add that to a 17-game pace, and you're putting that like for like at 149. It's not necessarily going to be linear to that point, but if we can get close, phenomenal. Njoku, 6 in tight end targets last season. The top earners from PFF, I've got Brock Bowers, 148, 17 games. Trey McBride, 139 and 16. Travis Kelce, 131 and 16 games. Of course, our guy Jonnu Smith, 109 in 17 games. George Kittle, 92 in 15 games. Njoku managed to be 10th in tight end receptions with 64. And then we go back to if it's Kirk Cousins, TJ Hawkinson had those years, tight end 4, tight end 2 in 2022 and 2023. To me, David Njoku doesn't have that name brand value, but he will after 2025. What do you got on David Njoku in 2025?
Yeah, man. I mean, the game is the same, right? Like Jerry Jeudy probably at this stage has earned his targets. Cedric Tillman, very scary that he got that concussion, missed the entire end of last year. And I'm not sure if Cedric Tillman's a guy that really deserves 100 targets. I mean, Elijah Moore was the least deserving guy of 100 targets, and he had back-to-back 100 targets on that team. Literally one of, if not the least efficient player in yards per route run of among the guys that got 100 targets in those 2 years. So, like, even if he's back, I'm not worried about Elijah Moore. What I'm worried about is a quarterback. Right, we got to figure that situation out. But again, as long as they get somebody serviceable in there, Kenny Pickett is probably just sub-serviceable. But if they do draft, like if in your situation, if you're rooting for Njoku, you want them to draft a quarterback. You just want them to at 2, right? It doesn't matter if it's Cam or Shedeur, whoever's there, Jackson Dart, who cares? Like, you just want them to have options, or bring Aaron Rodgers to town. Aaron Rodgers can be the new LeBron James and just show up at halftime, and then the Mud Dogs win the Bourbon Bowl in Cleveland, right? Like, if you want to fix your legacy, go to the Cleveland Browns as Aaron Rodgers and win. And hey, you know what? It'll probably be one of the few teams in the league where he wouldn't be the most hated quarterback in the room. So maybe, right? Maybe.
Oh, how you frame it.
But I just saying. So yeah, it's entirely possible. And Njoku has everything off the field. Njoku's career got set back by the Browns making the classic blunder of chasing Austin Hooper. The Falcons that year threw 50 more passes than the next highest team, and the Browns mistook that for Austin Hooper being really good, and that was a huge setback for David Njoku because Njoku was better than Hooper the whole time, and they had to chase the money because that's what bad teams do, but. Now he gets his opportunity because they're in the hole and they're not in a position to draft anybody either. So I think it's going to be Jeudy and Njoku at the top. Cedric Tillman could spoil your party. That's the one thing that could ruin it. But I'll bet against guys like that all day because, like you're saying, we're not betting against T. Higgins here, right? We're not betting against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We're betting against Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. So
hey, maybe Tillman can take the Rome Odunze route that the Bears are going to do. So Kmet can break out. And Njoku can break out. It can be the JMO role for Tillman.
Stretch the field. Yeah, and Cedric Tillman could still be fine in best ball.
That's what that's what I'm going to root for.
80, 90 targets for him. Yeah.
All right. So we're stargazing a little bit with tight end 3 here overall. So in a more, rational world there, Coop, where would you see David Njoku falling this year if he's got a great year?
I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, the problem is that you sit and you say Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are 1 and 2. So, I mean, obviously you're going to need some bad things to happen that we don't want to happen to potentially have him go. Njoku finish 3rd. I think he's probably going to fall in like the back end tight end 1 range from 7 to 8 to 9. Like every year there's a few guys where I'm like, this guy's most likely to finish back end, but not top 5. I think he could be top 5 though. I mean, like just because there's so few guys that realistically could be a top 2 target on their team. It's just so unrealistic. And I'll wrap the show because I do got to jump by saying that's what you should look for. So you guys named a ton of those situations. I mean, Hunter Henry still could be a top 2 target on the team. A guy I really like, Chig Okonkwo. If you look at, yes, I see it on there, the Chigga Choo Choo. If you look at the guys that have gotten 40+ yard plays over the last 5 years, there's been only 3 guys to have 3 or more plays of 40+ yards in one season. Those guys are George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, and Chig Okonkwo. Chig Okonkwo has the athleticism to do the things that Jonnu Smith, there it is. They do the things that Jonnu Smith does because he's got the 4.62, right? So 4.62, 8. We're playing that game again. 88th percentile.
Can't wipe this smile off my face.
88th, 87th percentile speed for 4.62, and he breaks those plays. And who's the second target on that right now? If it's not Chig Okonkwo, after Calvin Ridley, who's the second best pass catcher on the team?
Traylon Burks,
gone, right?
Traylon Burks, is that?
Keenan's gone.
I'm being like Traylon
Would be Burks. It probably would be Burks.
Yeah. I'm being serious. I wasn't being funny.
No. That's what I mean, though. I rolled my eyes because Traylon Burks hasn't done anything, but he probably is the second best pass catcher on the team. So they're a huge risk to draft someone, and that would be a problematic. But one of the best ways to create leverage in fantasy football is betting on rookies or betting against them, because every once in a while, for every time that you do have a super megastar, every once in a while you have a Corey Davis jersey behind you, or you have a sorry, I had to do it to you. Well, Corey Davis still had a solid career, but you have a hey, I'll do it myself. Patriots, N'Keal Harry, right? N'Keal Harry was a first-round pick, and he showed up and did nothing. And if the Titans draft somebody and he shows up and does nothing, the door is wide open for Chig Okonkwo.
All right. Okay. So Chig Okonkwo, 97th percentile 40-yard dash, 4.52.
4.52. I thought it was a 4.62.
No. I knew. I was like, I was gonna wait for you to finish cooking. And then I was
it was Jonnu Smith that ran the 4.62. That's what it was. That's why I got him confused. I was talking Jonnu. Yeah. Chig, man, he can scoot. And watch the play where there's a really good play he had against the Chiefs where he gets the ball on the screen and just breaks all the tackles and takes it to the house, man. It's just like those plays where we're not to the house, but just takes it for a 40+ yard play. And it's just like those plays get me so excited because there's so few guys that can create for themselves. He's like the opposite of Jake Ferguson. He can break the tackle. He can, when he breaks the tackle, he can take it to the house. Those and there were a bunch of plays with Tannehill, like they missed him on a flea flicker wide up and down the sideline where I almost took a bite out of my phone. Like there's so many situations where I'm just like, it was so close. You know what I mean? Like this guy's gonna make big plays, I think. If they do draft a wide receiver, he's more of a best ball play, obviously, just because you're still betting against it. But if they somehow don't, I mean, like this guy's got a clear path to targets, man. So there you go.
Yeah, right now it's looking like day 3 capital is where we're gonna land on a receiver because it's gonna be Cam Ward and then trade out of 35 or potentially an edge rusher. So it's looking good for Chig to. I mean, it's a contract year. It's like a gotta have it for in terms of his career. And you mentioned like the big plays, like he had the 70-yard touchdown against the Texans. He was money in the playoffs. Like, I mean, Will Levis was just doing his best Nathan Peterman impression throughout that whole deal. So, like, it's all there. That makes me so happy. I actually just offered him in a trade to somebody, and they were like, I don't really like Chig. And I was like, okay, good. I don't want to do this anyway.
In my mock draft, I actually have Chig getting vaporized. So I have. You might like this. You might like this as a fan and as a fantasy player. I have you guys taking Cam Ward at 1 and then trading back up into the back end of the first and getting Luther Bird.
I do like that a lot.
So I mean, just for because then you'd have Ridley on the outside and Burden as a guy, or I mean, it doesn't even have to be Burden, but it's just like to pair your quarterback with a young wide receiver and have Ridley in his kind of like 30-year-old age to help these guys. I think it would be a good pairing there. I mean, you got a lot of holes to fill, but like that it would be a sexy move.
There's so many questions I want to ask you. I know you have to go.
I gotta go. Yeah, I gotta go. DM me, dude. You guys, and again, we're gonna link back up before the season.
Absolutely. Coop, appreciate you coming on to the Pulse once again. This is year 2. You coming on. It'll be a yearly thing, hopefully. And tell everybody, you're coming off a couple of big awards, obviously, this year. So Fantasy Wire of the Year. Love it, man. Tell everybody where we can find all your stuff. Obviously, Fantasy Alarm, but yeah.
Fantasy Alarm, honestly, easiest way. Hit me up on Twitter at Coupe Fiasco right here. And I all my articles are on Fantasy Alarm because they let me write what I want. That's how you get that's the secret to getting the awards is you write all the SEO articles you have to. And if you do those, then you get to write the fun ones every once in a while. So all my articles there, most of my videos are on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube. And then again, SiriusXM channel 87. Give that subscription 6 to 8 p.m. every Thursday and Friday. And on the app, you can listen to it whenever you want. And then the Sunday mornings where we grind it out and do that. It's a lot of fun. So, but you guys rock, man. Thank you for coming on. And I told you you were going to have to kick me off because, I got a lot to say, but I'm kicking myself off now.
Appreciate it, Coop. And from all of us on the Dynasty Pulse and FSAN and the Undroppables, peace out, everybody. Have a good night.